Hello, everyone. So happy to be here with you guys. Lyndsey, hi, how are you? We are so happy to be back. And we are really happy today to have the author of Big Waves, Wooden Benches, Stephanie Wilson, with us. Hi, Steph. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing?
Good, good. We're just so happy that you're here. And you guys just met a little bit before when we were talking. And so we are all three actors that are based in New York. Lyndsey's on a little bit of a hiatus, but she's still our native New Yorker, which we love. And so, Steph, first of all, I just want to congratulate you and say what a miracle this book is.
Thank you.
And the fact that you said you were going to do it, and I remember when you told me you were going to do it, and the fact that you did it and got it done, and it is actually in. Hold up, can we hold it up and see it? Yeah, it is in your hands. It is in our hands. It has been published. What you have done is just amazing. Fabulous. So I want to ask you, can you tell us a little bit? It's a two-part question, actually. What was your inspiration? I mean, when you read the book, you will know, but I wanted to hear from your mouth what started this journey. And then Lyndsey, what's your question?
Well, I am so interested to hear how you started your journey, but also just, I guess, where your journey started, not only the journey that you told in the book, but also how you decided, like, okay, I am ready to share my story. I am ready to put it in a book, because we were just saying before we hopped on, but as artists, that can be a really scary thing when you know you have a story that's so worthy of being told, but then actually sharing it and getting it out there is a whole nother thing. So I am just so excited to hear about your experience and what kind of guided you to put your story into writing.
Thank you. We're all storytellers. And when you do that as a craft, I think often we search out the stories. And I was in a place in my life where I was doing a lot of theater, and I was just getting ready to take a theater piece and convert it into a short film. And we had done all the legwork. We put in so much sweat equity into getting this ready. And due to personal reasons, the screenwriter pulled the rights. And all of a sudden, we went from creating something to being dead in the water. And that can have such a feeling of defeat that can wash over you as in any creative arena. And for me, I just was so excited about this story. And somebody had said to me that I was complaining to, because we always go out and we vent. And they said, that happens. The only stories that no one can take from you are your own, right? And they said it so passive, and it hit me like this brick on my head. And I went, you're right. And I knew I had a story, but having that moment when you realize that you also have the power to tell your story kind of created this perfect storm. And that ping you get in your heart when you know you want to do something, that your heart is pulling you to do it, kind of created this sense of, I don't know how, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to take the first step forward. And so then I began to slowly write. I didn't 100% know the outcome. I wasn't convinced at the beginning it was going to be a book. Being a trained stage performer and an actor, I just assumed
Luna just gave you a thumbs up.
She did. She's going to make an appearance. Just wait.
She knew it was going to be a book.
We love her. She's welcome.
She did. Yeah, no, she's my Puerto Rican street dog that I rescued while writing this book. And so she's a part of it. But I thought maybe it would be a one-woman show. And then the more that I started to write it out, all of a sudden, the teachers I needed, the guidance I needed, all kind of came out of the woodwork. And the universe was kind of like, actually, this is going to be a book, which took me by surprise, to tell you the truth, and created a 7,000-hour, 3-year journey from start to finish. And to answer your question, Lyndsey, the real guiding force at times where I was uncertain, or at times where the discipline needed wasn't always right there, I've learned through telling people and talking about my story that there is a power in true stories. And as actors, we always sit in the make believe realm, but just, having somebody, when you say something embarrassing about yourself, they go, I do that too. And you go, whoa, I'm not as weird, is something that is really welcomed. Well, when you're struggling or when you're going through something and you read or you hear someone else's journey that you can relate to, just the feeling of knowing you're not alone is powerful. Storytelling can save lives. And I believe that more people, especially women or people who identify as women, should be telling their stories.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is so inspiring. I couldn't agree more. And that's something that I connected with in your book so much, is the whole time I was reading it, I was like, I can completely resonate with every single emotion that she's talking about, not just from an artistry standpoint, but also just finding out who you are and going against the grain where certain people don't expect you to take certain actions, like with you starting improv and going to your theater classes. And that wasn't something that you did from a super young age. It was kind of something that cropped up for you. And that can be really scary to be a beginner at anything. And so I know that that's something everyone can relate to, but also with the healing power of telling true stories and our stories. I'm not only an actress, and that's what I grew up doing. It's why I moved to New York. It's what I have a degree in, but I'm now also a certified life coach. And something I work with people on all the time is sharing their stories. And as a coach, I feel so fortunate to listen to people share their stories, sometimes for the very first time. And there is so much healing power in being able to say what you've been through, what you've learned. And that's something that I really hope that everyone gets a chance to do in some way, shape, or form. But for you to be able to put it into a piece of art is just truly incredible, so inspiring. And thank you so much for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's amazing. I have a question, Steph. So the book is so amazing, and I want, for people that haven't read it, so read it. First of all, run, don't walk, get it. But part of the reason that I love this story so much, one, is because it's so real, it's so raw. And I've always said this, I've said it to both of you on different occasions. Steph and I've had many times alone together, Lyndsey and I've many times alone together. And the thing that I just love is when there's real, true, good characters. You really don't need that much Zha Zha Jing or all that. I don't need a robot. I don't need a dragon. I just think life is so interesting, which is why, again, this book resonates so much. Tell me, and I know that a lot of the book is the characters that you met on this boat, right? That became very integral people in your life.
Yeah.
And I found all of them fascinating. But can you tell me, was there one that really made a huge difference to you? And you don't have to name names. I'm just saying, or one. I know there were so many stories that it really was kind of an eat, pray, love situation.
It was, and I don't want to. Of course, we don't want to spoil the story, but I think that the viewers might need a little bit of what is she talking about when she says boat. Just to give a little synopsis, the story is about me and my curation of a perfect life, being a slave to societal norms, a slave to other people's opinions, to approval. My self-worth was completely derived externally. And when all that crumbled, I was left at a crossroad of, do I rebuild an old life or do I forge forward into the unknown? Which led me to board a ship for 115 days that circled the world. And then the aftermath of that became quite the test of resilience, as I struggled not to, again, go backwards and rebuild the life that was comfortable, safe, and secure, but not authentic. So just to bring the viewers up to speed, that journey on the ship for 115 days is something that is as crazy as the idea was before I boarded, was something that I will lay on my deathbed and be so grateful that I did. I felt like I was in this nucleus of just isolation from the world. I didn't have internet. I didn't have my phone. And I was surrounded by all of these people from all over the world that have these journeys, these stories, and these nuggets of wisdom that I'm just soaking in. And there were two people that will forever, I mean, everybody, I'm picking two, but of course there are more. But right about a couple years before my world turned upside down, I lost my grandfather, who was not my blood, but my grandfather by choice. And he was one of the most important people in my entire life. And there was a gentleman on the ship, and his name is Pete. And he was so much like him that it was eerie. And I felt like I got my pop back for 115 days. And now knowing how the story turns out, it was such a blessing and a gift to have that before everything hit the fan. So he will forever be somebody that I am grateful to have met. The other is a crazy Australian guy who still calls me to this day once a month. His name is Kel, and he was in our industry, successful, but in Australia, retired. And he gives me wisdom on that ship that, you know, kind of foretells what is going to happen to me. And his advice and his encouragement, and I don't want to ruin it because you'll read it, or if you choose to, kept me going at those times where the idea of just giving up and that instant relief was so tempting. I would hear his words in my head. And later on, after the trip, I did get to meet up with him. He was in New York City, and I had the privilege of telling him that the words he shared with me brought me through a lot of tough times. And so I was able to thank him.
That's amazing. And by the way, you spoke about both those characters, and the way that you wrote those characters, I will tell you, even though this was a book, who knows where it's going to go, but the way that you wrote the characters, I love as an actor to play. I mean, I'm not going to play those two probably. I'm good, but I'm not that good. But there, it's just the richness of it and the way that you describe even the minutia of like sitting down to dinner and the shrimp cocktail, and you were much younger than everybody else too, which I love.
5 decades, yeah.
5 decades. But I love the fact that you were not an ageist, and that you, instead of feeling like, oh, doing this weird flip your hair, I'm so young thing. I mean, I don't know, maybe you did, probably not. I know you, but you took these people and their enriching stories and wove them into your experience.
I did, and this may partially be a sidebar, but when people say, like, give me advice, like I have, you know, younger nephews and a niece, and I have people in my life that will say, if you could give me any advice, I always say, befriend people who are much older than you and befriend people who are much younger than you. It's the wisest thing you can do, because there's so much enrichment you can get from the pendulum swing of age difference in your life. And for me, I hadn't had that opportunity to be surrounded by people who were all retired from all over the world. They've been there, they've done it. It doesn't matter if I'm a younger generation with a different perspective or progressiveness, you know, as we all know that's going on now. It doesn't matter. There is still so much wisdom that is timeless that they can offer you. And it was the biggest blessing.
Thank you for saying that. Again, it was a blessing, right? Let's hear it. Let's hear it, because it's super cool. I love that, right? And I mean, listen, this is hilarious. We have 3 ladies here. I'm the old one of the bunch. Yeah. And then we got this young in here, and you're still it's great, but we can learn from everybody, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I can resonate with that so much too. Just to resonate with that so much too. I think that's an incredible piece of wisdom, because there's something about bringing different perspectives and different life experiences together. And that's not just with age, but with race, with gender, with identity, with background. There are so many things that we can learn from other people's experiences that we may never get to have. And learning other people's perspectives, especially as artists, especially as actors, helps us be able to empathize and be able to put our feet in other people's shoes. And so I don't think that's only for artists, but also for people in general to build that empathy muscle and to understand what life is like for people just other than yourself, you know?
Which is amazing, Lyndsey, that you bring up that point. And I just saw a quote. I love this. I think I've told every person you meet knows something that you don't know, learn from them. And I felt like that was what you embodied in this journey, Stephanie, was that you literally felt that every person you met knew something and you were going to take it, learn from it, grow from it, do something with it, plant a seed. I don't know.
I agree with you. And, you know, just to say, I mean, this trip around the world is full of new places, adventure, some danger, hilarious moments, but the heart of it was the people on the ship. And I just find that there's this beautiful irony in place where here I am, I'm 33 years old, the age where I had everything put together, this custom home, the career, the sports car, the shoe closet. I volunteered. I did all of these things.
The shoe closet?
Oh, you know, I mean, well, I in my house, I had a hers and hers closet. You know, it was really going to in the future be a hers and his, but the his became my shoe closet. But, you know, I think to everybody outside of my world, it was, oh, she's just going to meet somebody. That's the final piece of the puzzle. They'll have a family and all of the things. And there is nothing wrong with that. My sister is a stay-at-home mother, 4 kids, married 25 years. And I think she's the biggest feminist because she wakes up every day and lives life on her terms. Her terms just coincidentally align with societal norms. But here I am, a 33-year-old woman who all of those things crumble at once. And I'm at this fork in the road, questioning my authenticity, questioning everything. And even as an artist, you know, we taught, you know, Lyndsey, you mentioned, you know, I took some of these classes and I started exploring acting. Doesn't matter what the art is, when you are living inauthentically or for things outside of yourself and you start to dabble in creativity, that false foundation is going to crumble. And that is what happened with me. The story isn't about acting. That was the catalyst. That was the wrecking ball because it created a version of me that couldn't sustain that life I had created. And here I was at this crossroad and I take an extreme swing and say, I'm not just going to start a business, learn a new hobby. I'm going to give up my entire life and board this ship. Yet I'm surrounded by people who grew up in a time where that was unheard of, where a woman at my age doesn't do that. And yet they embraced me, they encouraged me, they celebrated me. And that was the most beautiful irony of the whole story.
What was your scariest moment? Or wait, I won't let you, so you can tell me and again, people are going to read this beautiful book. What was your scariest moment before, during, or after, or you can say all three?
I mean, my scariest moment before is, you know, without getting too deep into the book, is I made plans to do something and I didn't have the means to do it. That journey of putting yourself out there. And I'll say this just in case somebody doesn't read the book. And I don't mean to sound like Tony Robbins right now, but I've learned that there is this point where if you're trying to do something and the means or the outcome or the solution isn't presenting itself, it's like you get to the point where you're 95% of the way there and you're like, nope, it's not going to work out. And I reached that point, and to the opinion of people in my life thinking I had lost my mind and turned insane, I kept going to the bottom of the night, to the very last minute. I went 100% and said, I'm not going to be the one that rejects my outcome. I'm going to have the outcome reject me. And I kept going. And at the last minute, you know, as you'll read, there was a last minute miracle that came into play. And it taught me, don't be the one that turns around 97% of the way there. And that was the scariest thing to do because it was all at risk of me looking like a lunatic. And that is something that's really hard to navigate when you are going down blind faith. and you're all in on something that you believe in that looks like you've lost your mind. During the cruise, I think the scariest moments. Now there is a chapter that has a little danger in it. And I think one would think that that's the scariest moment. I found myself into some trouble when I got to India. But the scariest moments for me were the meltdowns I had in my cabin, because so much of parts of me that I hated started to surface. You know, when you're on a ship, especially in the middle of the ocean, because there was times when we were at sea for a week crossing the Pacific or, you know, other large bodies of water, where, you know, you are so disconnected from life, from people, and you and yourself. That's all there is. And I had some serious meltdowns, and I even wrote about a few where I got to the core of the lack of self-love that I had for myself and my worth. And those were ugly and they were dark and they scared me to no end, but they wound up being one of the most healing parts of the journey for me. But it's not easy to go through them, and they could be very scary, because I always felt like there was a part of me standing in the corner watching, going, oh my God, what's happening? After the cruise, the scariest part to me, oddly, was, you know, I bottomed out quite a bit. Things definitely turned upside down more than one time. And there were villains, and it was like, you know, it's like The Alchemist, where, you know, you kind of go on this journey and everything just goes awry. And there were moments where I really wanted to just give up. And I hear a lot from people who run marathons that at mile 18, they want nothing more than to stop running because the pain is too great. And that's the mile most people quit. And then after their muscles heal and they get a bite to eat, they're like, oh, could I have done another mile or two? And looking back, I think those scariest moments were the temptation to quit, to go back to, you know, my old life and what was easy and instant relief, because knowing that after a month or two or three, I would have gone, I should have kept going. And as tired as you are, I just kept going. I need to just give it one more day. I need to go one more day further. But it was so scary to me because I didn't know if I was going further into a hole or if I was almost at the light of the end of the tunnel. And that faith to keep going despite the temptation to give up was so scary to me, because if it's bad now, what if it gets worse? And that question in your head can destroy your journey if you let it. And that was very scary for me.
It sounds like you really confronted so many fears on your journey. And I think that's one of the reasons why your story is so inspiring. But also, it really reminds me of it being a spiritual journey as well, where it's like, again, like when Maggie referenced like an eat, pray, love situation, it's sort of like you had to take this journey. You had to put yourself outside of your comfort zone again and again and again and again to find out, who am I really? Where am I really at with my self-love, with my self-image, with my self-compassion, with my self-forgiveness? And I think it does take us getting outside of our comfort zone for us to be able to confront our fears, because when we're comfortable, we don't get scared too often. And if we do, it's usually, you know, just anxiety or worry. And they tend to be the same anxieties and worries that we face over and over and over again. But when you are put in new situations, you experience new feelings, you experience new problems to solve, you experience new parts of yourself as well that come along for the ride. And it's really beautiful in your story as well, how many, like you said, like little miracles happened. And that was one of the most interesting things about your story to me, is the whole time I was reading it, I was like, this really is a spiritual experience. And I was having a spiritual experience reading your book, because it really depends on where we put our focus on our fear, and we can let that stop us, or on our faith in miracles. And sometimes, I know it sounds really cheesy, but when we have enough faith that it's going to work out, in my own life, my experience is that it really does work out. If we just really believe in it and we just keep going, that's where we find deeper truths, deeper joys, and deeper peace than we've ever found before. So I'd love to just reflect that back to you and also ask, do you feel like it was a spiritual experience for you? And now looking back, how has your faith in those little miracles grown, if at all?
Yeah. That's loaded. But I love that you thought it was a spiritual journey, because I agree with you. And you know, to first address the fears, people ask me in one word, what is your book about? And the word is always freedom. Um, because I freed myself from so many things, other people's expectations, what I thought I needed to be, and even fear of everything that I would, the fears that I had from childhood, from adulthood. You know, we all have them. And when you have them come to fruition, which every type of fear that I had pretty much did, and you survive it, it's the most freeing experience that you could have. And I think, you know, from a spiritual standpoint, it's redefining the stigma of struggle. And that is a very spiritual topic, is struggle. And I went on this journey wanting to find myself, which has its own stigma, but to create a new life. And there were cracks in my foundation that needed fortification. And when we all want to build muscle, what do? We go to the gym. Well, what do you do when you lift weights? It rips your muscles apart. Then you're sore and it hurts. And then it strengthens because it rebuilds stronger. That's part of the journey. But a lot of the time, we want to go on these eat, pray, love journeys. And I love Elizabeth Gilbert. This is no knock to her whatsoever. And jokingly, my first draft, I had titled Eat, Pray, WTF, just as a working title, because I did feel my story did fit that title. But there's this thing where, oh, I leave everything behind and I wound up rich with the love of my life, and there's a movie and everything works out. But in reality, a lot of the gifts from these journeys are overcoming the struggles that that journey presents, because you walk out of it so much stronger, so much self-assured, so much stronger in your foundation, to where anything that I'm afraid of from the past that I've overcome, bring it. I know I can do it. I know I'm capable. The biggest gift you can give yourself spiritually is to prove yourself to yourself. And you will never accomplish that if you stay safe. And I'm not telling everybody to take very irresponsible risks, but I am encouraging everybody that when you get that pull of your heart, and you know when you ignore it, and you know when you feel it, walk in the direction of it. Even if you can't control the outcome, even if it's crazy, it won't lead you wrong. It might lead you down a path you don't think you're meant to go down, or you don't want to go down, but that pull of your heart will never lead you astray. And that is what the spiritual message is in my book. And so I'm sorry, I know you had more questions. I kind of went on a tangent there, but did I answer that?
Okay.
Yes,
absolutely.
Okay.
No, that
Okay.
was so beautifully said. And I really, I couldn't agree more with not only the going out of your comfort zone, but when you follow your heart's pull towards something, like you said, I think that's how we strengthen our self-trust, is that the tug of our heart might take us towards challenge, but it's the challenge we need to get the outcome that we're desiring. And it doesn't mean there won't be road bumps or hurdles along the way, but life is an adventure. And when you see it that way, and you can kind of be playful with it, and have a sense of humor about it as well, it makes it a little bit easier to navigate. And I imagine that had to be a really enriching experience for you as the author, looking back, knowing what you know now with that perspective, to see it with a little bit of a sense of humor that maybe you wouldn't have had in the moment, or to have that perspective is just so golden. How was writing the book? Was that healing for you as well, and in your own sense, looking back, or what was that process like?
There were parts that were pretty painful, but it was healing. Oddly, it felt that same heart pull that I felt the day I booked that trip around the world. I don't know what I'm doing, but I have to. And it became so strong that I actually, in the pandemic, when the career that I had, I was doing work for a company that they really downsized during the pandemic. And I took that time to take 2 years off and focus on my book full time because the pull in my heart was so strong to tell this story. You know, I do now remember you asked about omens now in my life and signs and synchronicities. If you read the book, they're everywhere. And I never read The Alchemist, oddly, because I went to a Catholic school growing up. That's probably the reason why. Yeah, they did not have that on the bookshelf. But somebody who read my book said, "Did you get your idea from The Alchemist?" And I went, "What?" And then I read The Alchemist and I went, "Oh, okay." It's oddly very parallel. And it's so synchronicitous in so many ways that I almost wrote it fiction based on true events to protect myself. But somebody said to me in the production world and said, "No, they won't believe your story if you say it's fiction and based on true events," because there were so many, and they're still there. And I think I even say in my epilogue, the next time I'm called into the whirlwind of the unknown, I'll go, because I now understand and have full faith in it. And when it called me to write this book and to tell my story, I didn't know. I grew up dyslexic. I didn't know that I had a talent to write a book. And it wasn't even unlocked until random people came out of the woodwork to help me learn how. And now I'm looked at as a very talented writer and a talented storyteller. When I was called to write this book, that was the last thing. If you would have asked me 5 years ago if I was capable, I would have said, not in a million years. It's not in my wheelhouse. I was dyslexic growing up. I can't do it. Yet here I get this omen, and I knew so hard, I have to do this. This is what's pulling me forward, and everything worked out. And that's just such a testament to following your heart.
Well, it worked out. And I'll tell you, Steph, again, I want to go back to this, and I want to give you major kudos, because when you talked about the fact that I remember when you told me, you said, "I'm going to do this, I'm going to start it." And I'll be very, very, I've told you this. I was like, all right, sounds great. Fantastic. Right? Because the fact that you did this, and I would talk to you periodically, and you're like, "I just wrote 60,000 more words. I just did this. I just did." And I was like, wow, you laid that brick, one brick at a time, put the mortar in it, built that thing up, and you did it, and you got it done. And it's a miracle. It is a miracle, because so few people, I mean, listen, it's all great to have the idea and everything. The fact that you have now manifested it and put it into, let's hold it up again. I just got to see it. I love it. Let's hold it up again, right? It's so in your hands, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that feel amazing?
It does. And I can open a page and I can look at a sentence and I can tell you a 15-minute story of how that sentence morphed into being.
I think this is a great, why don't you just open it up to a page and read us a little excerpt? How about that?
Read you an excerpt from a page.
Yeah, because I like to, right?
Okay, I'll do that.
Sentence or two.
Okay.
Just to give a teaser to the audience that hasn't read it yet.
Okay, let's see. I was just trying to get to the start of a chapter because I didn't feel like reading the middle one, but I got chapter 4. That's the chapter I actually booked the cruise. Would you like me to read that, or would you like me to start at the beginning at the prologue? Which would you choose?
I don't know, Lynn. What do you think?
I like chapter 4. I trust you.
Yeah.
All right. I'll just read the first little section. I spent the next 4 days dedicated to my couch, Charlie, takeout food, and romantic comedies. It felt good to relax, not think, and let my PTSD symptoms stay at bay as much as possible. On day 4 of my veg out, I ordered my favorite Thai food and put on the movie Pride and Prejudice. Just as Mr. Darcy was confessing his love to Elizabeth for the first time, I pressed pause. Deborah, my therapist, had said something in our session that I couldn't shake. Something about how the adventurous girl who'd fallen silent was trying to come out. Frankly, it was haunting me. I grabbed my notebook and pen. Okay, younger Stephanie, what do you want? You tell me and it's done. I waited for something to write down. Nothing came. Fine, have it your way. I tossed the notebook to the other side of the couch before pressing play again. Sitting with my arms crossed, I stared at the TV, half paying attention. And as Mr. Darcy confessed his love to Elizabeth for the second time, I wandered back to the past, visualizing my younger, wide-eyed self. I'll stop there. But
there we go.
Yeah.
That was amazing. And that's the thing about your writing too. I'm like, is she in my life? Is she in my head? Because me, like a few years ago, Pride and Prejudice is one of my favorite movies. I mean, I don't know who doesn't love that movie. Amazing. Also, like having Thai takeout and vegging on the couch and then thinking about what your therapist said in your last session can totally relate to that, you know? So I'm reading it and I'm like, wow, this is not only relatable, but it makes me smile. It's funny, but it's also incredibly deep as well. And it's getting to the heart of something that for anybody that's done any inner work at all, and I think we all do on some level, you know how scary it is to start peeling back your own layers and being like, okay, like where am I? Where is this part of me? Where's my younger self? Where's my adventurous self? Where's my courageous self? Whatever we're looking for is such an intimate and vulnerable process. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah,
no,
and I
thank
think
you for letting me. What?
I think you did. That's another beautiful thing about the book is you shared your younger self, your fully Steph self at a certain juncture. I think what you shared is also the Steph that you want to become and maybe want to be. There were so many levels of yourself that you shared, which we all have. And also, I do think that your pop came back to you as Pete.
Yeah, I think so too. It was very eerie. And, thank you, Lyndsey, for just reinforcing the relatability of the writing because, when I sat down, I always asked myself, what's the intention? What is the intention for my writing for the day? And it was never to sound fancy, to use 75-cent words. It wasn't even to alter anything but the truth. My goal was to insert relatability, to say things that I believed people would relate to and have the courage to do it. And so thank you for honoring the fact that I accomplished that, because that was really my true goal. And don't get me wrong, the day the publication was announced, I sat on my couch and was like, a lot of people are going to know a lot about me. And there was a vulnerability to that. And that courage, I want to see more of in this world. So.
That's so inspiring. It's so amazing. As someone who would love to write a book someday, seeing you do it and seeing how well it can be done and how vulnerably your story can be shared is just, again, I mean, the word that I keep using is inspiring, but it does inspire me. And I think that your book will inspire anyone that reads it. Again, yeah, of course, it is so relatable, but your story is absolutely incredible as well. And it's just such a joy to read.
Thank you. When I first published it, I figured, family and friends would be like, yay, we loved it. And there was a social media influencer who I'm a big fan of. She's an inspiration to me. And she reposted because I had worn her hat. And this woman, the first day I published it, in an airport in Colorado, saw this influencer's post and bought a copy. And read it on an airplane and left a review on Barnes & Noble that said, saw this in a post, had zero expectations, couldn't put it down. And that was the moment in all my fear where a stranger actually loved the story that I thought, okay, I did the right thing, and it gives you that wind in your sail. Because I really want people to read this book and go, you know what, I'm going to keep going. And it doesn't have to be in a huge thing. It could be something as a hobby. It could be any aspect of their life where they just need a nudge to go, all right, other people have kept going. I'm going to keep going. Or other people have done this. I'm not alone. So my mission is to just create that empathy and that community through sharing of my story.
So amazing. So amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing about your book, for sharing your time with us. Something Maggie and I really love to do is to wrap up the podcast episode with a quote or with like some little notes to kind of leave the audience with. But I know we've spent so much time just really talking about your book and the influence of how you wrote it. I feel like everyone now knows you, knows your heart, knows the intention behind your work. So we thought it'd be fun to just ask a couple of like little fun get to know you questions to wrap up.
I love it. Let's do it.
Okay?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. So the first question I want to ask you, again, just kind of fun, kind of silly, but what is your favorite color and why?
Oh, this is a great one. So my favorite color is green. It's hard to see on the camera, but I have very big eyes in real life, and I had to grow into them. So when I was in school, I was made fun of and called frog eyes. And so in order to combat that, I had a birthday party that was frog themed when I was 10 years old to say, I love frogs. So I'm glad you called me frog eyes. To this day, I still get frog gifts. And because of that, my favorite color is green.
That is an amazing answer. I am so glad I asked that. Green is my favorite color too, for a whole other host of reasons, but good for you. 10-year-old Stephanie was like, I'll show you. I love myself.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so the next question is, what are you grateful for today? Maybe the most grateful for?
I'm most grateful for my friends and family. The love and support that they've thrown my way, despite sometimes not understanding what I'm trying to do or why I'm doing it, is just something that has kept wind in my sails. And even in those moments of them questioning me, it created a level of reinforcement because it caused me to question myself. And when the answer was yes, keep going, then it reinforced my why. So I'm very grateful for them in every aspect. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. Okay, and the last question I have is, what piece of art are you currently binging? So it could be a TV show, it could be a book, it could be just like the movie that you watched last night. Is there any art that you're just really into right now? Could be a play.
There's two. One, I mean, you caught me on a day when the final season of Mrs. Maisel came out. And,
right.
If you saw me, lively in real life, a lot of people tell me I remind them of her. And I have done stand-up comedy. So, like, I love that show. And I'm in this problem area where it's like I want to watch all the shows, but then I want to spread it out because it's the last season. And the other would be, I love to read. It's kind of like an escape for me. And Taylor Jenkins Reid has just been, I read a lot of books, about 1 or 2 a week, but just The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, just all of her stuff is just, there's very thought-provoking writing that she creates, and I really like it.
Amazing. That is so great. I love Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Very excited to watch that as well. But thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining us. Thank you for sharing your story. Again, you are so inspirational, compassionate, and just a beautiful person. So it was really beautiful to get to know you. And just, we're very grateful for your time. Thank you so much.
And thank you for having me. It's just been so wonderful to chat with you.
Absolutely. You're so welcome. Before we hop off, I just want to pass it to Maggie one last time. Maggie, do you have any final words? Anything else you want to say?
Just want to say, love you guys. Go get the book, Big Waves, Wooden Benches. Hold it up against Steph. Let's see it. Let's see it. It's so powerful to hold it. It's gorgeous. Yeah, go read it.
It is amazing. All right. Well, thank you, everyone watching. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please go ahead and click the like button. Click below to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. We will have all of Stephanie's book information down below, so you can click the link to be able to purchase it and read it for yourself. And thank you so much for being here. We will see you in the next one.
Love you guys.